Welcome to Halifax Sports Talk. Andrew and Dayton with you, and we are here to talk Thunderbirds, Mooseheads, maybe a little bit of Wanderers as usual, and we are very happy to have Jeremy Keefe with us as well to break things down, freshly tanned as he's back from Mexico, so we're happy to have him with us. But Dayton, it's good to see you as always. Couple days off for us. We did miss one show, but you know what? These teams are struggling, and it's a lot harder to do shows when our teams can't get in the win column.
Andrew, it's tough. We do have one team that's winning, and that's this team right here, but that's not specifically in Halifax, so it's not really Halifax Sports Talk based, although there are some guys from Halifax on the team. The Mooseheads and Thunderbirds, both in the L column lately. The Mooseheads look like they were going to pick up a win last night in Gatineau. They were up 5-3 in the third. Shootout loss. So that's just the way of the road lately in Halifax.
It's tough, and it will bring Jeremy in with this segue. I'll just say, sometimes I feel like it makes it even harder to assess a team when they're losing close games. Jeremy, good to see you as always. I mean, how do you assess this Thunderbirds team right now? Because even when they're close to winning, it's still not getting the result they want. Does it make you feel any better about this team if they're close, even in defeat? Or is it still a loss is a loss?
No, for sure. I'm with you on that. And I think we've talked about this before. Like, they're not getting the wins, but they're not getting blown out either. And that game that we just saw against Buffalo, right, who are the defending champs, and they're maybe not playing, at the caliber that they have over the last couple of seasons, but they're still a really good team, and they've got some guys who are as good as anybody when it comes to scoring in the league. And Halifax was right there with them, especially they traded quarters, right? I think Buffalo just took over in the second quarter. That's when we saw Hill make his exit. It was a rough night for him. He's played so well this season so far. So you're bound to have a rough night. But Hutch stepped up, and in that third quarter, it was all Halifax. So it's kind of like, I'm not looking at it going, these guys can't compete. I thought that was an excellent game. I half my body is burned from the Mexican sun, but I didn't feel burned from watching that Thunderbirds game. I thought it was a great game, and it was it came down to one goal, right? Halifax almost won. Unfortunately, that doesn't really get you much, right? Like you're not getting a point. You're not getting your team in the win column. So, there's been a lot of close games. Unfortunately, Halifax now, after starting the season 2-0, sits at 3-6 at the midpoint of the season. There's 9 games to go. It is crunch time. Only 8 teams are going to go to the playoffs, and we're about to take on a couple that are sitting in those spots. So these are really, really important games that are coming up against San Diego. The week after that against Calgary. We've got Las Vegas and we've got Toronto. I mean, other than Calgary, those are all teams that are sitting in playoff spots. We need wins now to have a chance. And so while we've kind of, unfortunately, Halifax has dug a little bit of a hole, I don't look at it like they can't compete with these guys. They can't beat these teams that are coming up. They absolutely can. It's just unfortunate that it hasn't really gone our way for most of the games that we've seen, other than that really strong start that we had, right?
Jeremy, they go across the country. Well, I guess you could say across the country. San Diego's pretty much on the far side of the continent, I guess. The time zone's about 4 hours different, and they've not really done a lot of back-to-backs. They've had a lot of weeks where they've been playing, and then they've had an off week the next, and then the next week they're right back into it. But it's a back-to-back, and they've got to go coast to coast. Do you think that's going to have a little bit of wear and tear, or that's going to cause them any issues? They seemed to do well when they went across to Saskatchewan that time. They didn't really get blown out. They haven't really got blown out. Do you think they're going to have to deal with much when it comes to the travel aspect? Because that can really take a toll on teams when teams are, traveling, training, especially to a warmer climate. Right now Halifax is definitely not the warmest temperature, and then San Diego, it's definitely not the coldest. So it's not the same when you go to think about things.
Yeah, it's going to be a long trip. Both of these ones, they're probably some of the furthest that the Halifax would have to travel, right? San Diego and Calgary, and Las Vegas as well. Unfortunately, that's just part of the game, right? When you're playing professional sports, you sometimes have to be on the road, and two in a row that are long distance games. Not ideal. I mean, we've got two road games and we've got two home games, so very important that road swing. They come away with at least a win, if not two wins here would be really nice. And yeah, that can be pretty difficult, especially, when you've had a couple of home games and they haven't gone your way recently. So, and as you mentioned as well, there's been kind of a bit of a lull there, right? Like I think they played and then they were off for a week, played and then they're off for a week, and now it's they're going to be just going straight through here. So, yeah, it's important that the guys rest up this week, for Saturday's game, and do the same thing for the one after that, right? We need these guys to be firing on all cylinders when they go out on these two games. And like I said, it's not ideal that they are going to be two road games. Now, the difference being too, right? Like these are guys who are used to traveling all over, like on a weekly basis, the playing in the NLL. That's just, it comes with the territory. So I don't think that, like especially some of the veteran guys, these guys are used to it, right? It probably doesn't bother them too much. And it's also not like they're going to San Diego and they're going to stay around there and then they're going to go to Calgary. Like they're going to go back and they're going to sleep in their own beds for a couple of days and then they're going to get back on the road. And then after that, like I mentioned, they've got two games at home. So yeah, it not ideal to be on the road for two and to have two in a row on the road like that, back to back, week after week. But if they can come out and look good against San Diego and get a win, that would be really a good feather in the cap. And then taking on Calgary. Calgary is a team that's really been struggling this year, so I could see that being perhaps a slightly easier game for them, hopefully. And so if they come away with a win in San Diego, they'll be riding high, and I think they'll take that momentum right into Calgary, right into the Saddle Dome, and come away with another win. I'm predicting that they're going to have a pretty good stretch here for the next couple of weeks. I know my predictions don't always come true, or maybe they're the exact opposite of what we'd hope them to be. But yeah, I mean, I could see this being a decent road swing. Then it's back home for a couple of games, and I think then they split the rest of them after that, right? So it's back and forth, home games and away games. It's crunch time, as I mentioned. This is the midpoint of the season, so there's no excuses for any of that. They've just got to step up.
It's always tough when one of my friends, I didn't know what the score of the game was, and one of my friends was like, "You're not going to believe what happened in the game tonight," or this was an unbelievable game. And when I heard that, I'm thinking, okay, I better be getting a positive story here, guys. And then, of course, it turns into like, it was such a dramatic loss. And it's like, dude, I wanted you telling me about dramatic wins, not dramatic losses, which can make it a little bit tougher to hear about. But, Jeremy, I guess I always do try and like to take the optimistic approach, even though we have to mention the negatives certain times. What have you seen from the team this season so far that could make fans out there believe that it's possible to turn things around?
Well, it's similar to what we were talking about when we started off here, right? These are not games where they're really getting blown out, and we've seen some big blowouts. I mean, Halifax blew out Oshawa in the first game. We talked about Georgia and Colorado just running up the score on some of these teams. That hasn't really happened against Halifax. Warren Hill has kept them in a lot of these games. They've got the goaltending that means as long as on the offensive side of the ball they're producing, then they've got a chance. And that's why we've seen 1-goal games and 2-goal games. I mean, these are losses that are really tight, right? When you look at their goals for, their goals against, they're pretty close. It's not like some of the teams where there's a 30-goal difference or something like that, right? So yeah, I mean, if you're talking to somebody and they say, okay, well, Halifax is 3-6, like, why should I care? Why should I watch these guys? It seems like this is not their season. I'd say, well, go back and look at what these scores have been, right? They've been competitive in all of the games, right? Even the 6 that they lost, they haven't been blowouts. They haven't been games where they didn't look like they should be on the floor against the team they're playing against. They beat the defending champs. They had a record-breaking game, in terms of only letting 2 goals in. Like, it's an exciting team. It really is. And I mean, losing by 1 goal against Buffalo, in the last game. And I mean, I think there was one called back that Jameson scored like between his legs or something, a ridiculous looking goal, but you know, his toe was in the crease or something. I mean, right there, that's one that maybe sends it to overtime. And the last time they played Buffalo in overtime earlier this season, they ended up winning. So, you know, my comment to anybody who's wondering if, you know, Halifax, what kind of a team they are and what kind of a chance they might have is this is a team that is looking like they're, you know, low to the mid pack right now in the season because of their record, but they're every bit as good as almost any team in the league. There's a few that are really standing out now, like Georgia and Colorado, and, you know, like that are proving to be some of the really, really tough teams, the teams that you could expect to go far in the playoffs. But Halifax is looking like a team that's not too far off of that. Just unfortunately, the record doesn't reflect that because they are losing these close games. So yeah, if you want to watch a team that can lay big hits, can score, really great goaltending that we're seeing, you know, we're seeing some fast-paced lacrosse out of these guys, and it's been really good high-level lacrosse. So, you know, if you want an exciting game, Halifax is providing it for fans. Unfortunately, as we've talked about many times, that record is just not you know what we'd like for it to be. 3-6 is very unfortunate, especially after starting 2-0. But you know, it could very easily have gone. You know, we could be looking at a 5-4 kind of record, or even better than that, very easily, just by 1 or 2 goals different.
Jeremy, when I look at the stats for the San Diego Seals, I see a lot of their offense and a lot of shots on goal coming from their top 2 players, Wesley Berg and Trey Leclerc. They've got 81 and 83 respectively. And then the rest of the guys, like the next closest guy is at 64, 56, 53. And then it kind of falls off. It starts to be offense by committee. Do you think that this is kind of a advantage for the Thunderbirds, especially with them having a goaltender like Warren Hill? A lot of the offense is just going to come from those 2 guys. If they shut down those 2 top guys, do you think the Thunderbirds will have a decent chance here?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it reminds me of, you know, what we were talking about last time, right? Where you know, Buffalo has a couple of guys like Dane Smith and Byrne, right, who are just like incredible offensive players. Halifax is the same way. Randy Stotts and Clark Peterson are leading the charge on offense there. Cody Jamieson, you know, is still playing really well, even though he's not, you know, at the top of the points or goal scoring list, right? Like he has been in previous years. But Halifax has two pillars of offense, and San Diego does as well. And it could come down to like you mentioned, you know, a big game out of Warren Hill could shut those guys down and leave the door wide open for Halifax to have you know, a high scoring offensive game and get the W. So yeah, I think they stack up pretty well against this team. San Diego does have a better record. They're 5-4 right now. So but you know, at Halifax, with where they are in the standings, they're used to playing against teams that have better records. I think the only team that had is lower in the standings that they've played is Oshawa. Everybody else, right, like Saskatchewan, that's absolute top of the league. They played them twice. Same thing with, you know, Buffalo. They're not quite as highly ranked, but they're the defending champs for multiple years, and they've had to play them twice. So, you know, this is a team that you know, is now coming up on some teams that they haven't played yet this year, but they should have a little bit of a better faring against. And I've been saying this for a few weeks, and I'm really hoping that this is how things could shape up here over the next few weeks. So if they shut those guys down, if Warren Hill is standing on his head as he's done multiple times this season, and you know, he absolutely could. I'm sure he's going to want to come back and get some revenge, right? You know, having a rough night that he had last week. So if we see Hill shut the door, we see guys like Graham Hossack, you know, really just keeping people's scoring chances low, and Stotts and Peterson doing what they've been doing all year, Jameson as well. You know, then I could see Halifax coming away with a really good result here.
Before we let you go, Jeremy, just around the league, you've touched on a handful of teams already, but you mentioned the schedule maybe could be favorable for them coming up. And obviously, you know, when you look ahead, you want to have that schedule, and every game's a hard game. They've proven that. But just let us know what you've seen around the league, maybe a standings update, or just kind of teams that we should watch out for, maybe any surprising teams this season for you just so far, just off the top of your head, like really anything that's caught you off guard. And when you look at this schedule, where do you see this Thunderbirds team fitting in realistically at this point in the season?
Well, it like I said, it's crunch time, right? This is the midpoint of the season, and now we're coming up on some teams that Halifax could absolutely, definitely get wins against, right? Because, like I said, they took on teams like Saskatchewan, Colorado, Georgia. These are all top of the league, and then Buffalo to go 1-1 against the defending champs. I mean, like, they have not had an easy schedule so far. And San Diego is, at 5-4. They're a pretty decent team. They're a mid-pack team for sure. But I think Halifax stacks up well against them, and I think they could get a win. Calgary is, one of the lower ranked teams in the league. They're kind of in the basement. They're having probably a rebuilding year. They've got some guys who could definitely score, but they're not having a banner year. So, the next opponent there being one that Halifax can absolutely beat. They've got Las Vegas, which is another, I would say sitting around the same spot as San Diego in the league, and then Toronto as well. I mean, these are all teams that are in playoff spots, but I'm not saying that these are by any stretch teams that Halifax can't compete with. They absolutely can. So there's some tougher teams coming up after all of those. But I look at the next 4 games, right? These 2 on the road and the 2 at home as games that Halifax could win all of. And I mean, what a great, move that would be midpoint of the season to be able to pull off 3 or 4 even wins and turn this record, into a positive one, heading into the playoffs, and maybe even make a move for getting into the playoffs, and having some postseason games in Halifax once again would be great. Like I said, they've kind of dug a little bit of a hole by unfortunately losing some really tight games to some really good teams. It's been a really tough schedule so far, but this is far from over. This is the midpoint of the season. I think the guys are going to be really geared up and ready to go. They know that it's go time, right? They came out strong. They've had a bit of a dip for the last few weeks, and they know that now is the time to get those wins if they want to, find themselves in the playoffs and make a real statement here in the NLL.
Well, Jeremy, there's one last thing we need from you, and you probably know what it is by this time, and that is a score prediction for the San Diego Seals home game against the Halifax Thunderbirds coming up this weekend. What is it?
Give us the win, Jeremy. We need it. Give it to us.
I'm thinking it's a win. As you can tell, I mean, I've been optimistic all season, and I've been looking at this midpoint stretch as maybe overly optimistic. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I definitely think Halifax is capable of getting the win against the Seals. I think their goaltending is better. I could see them winning it by a number of goals, but I'm going to go a little bit on the conservative side. I'm going to say my prediction is 12-10 for the Halifax Thunderbirds this Saturday. And by the way, this is one that is on NLL Plus. So fans in Halifax, they can't go watch it at the Nest, but you can sign up and you can tune in on Saturday night, and you can watch this game from the comfort of your living room.
Beautiful.
I can't wait.
That's the best thing about NLL Plus is that it's free to sign up and free to watch.
I'm feeling optimistic after this conversation, and some people like to be cautiously optimistic, but you've got me pumped up, and sometimes scheduling is all it needs, and so I hope you're right. No pressure and no offense to the teams that are about to play, but we're thinking they're beatable, and that's the goal here for this next game. So, Jeremy, great to see you after your trip. We'll be talking next week, and hopefully the next couple chats we have are after some W's.
Hopefully, yeah. Thanks a lot, fellas. All the best.
Thanks, Jeremy.
See you, Jeremy. All right, we got to get to some Mooseheads talk in a minute, but I think we got to dedicate a minute or two to what's been going on with the Olympics at the games in Milano. I mean, Dayton, what can we say? As a Canadian, you expect to win every game. John Cooper talked about it. They're being chased. They don't want to be the ones doing the chasing, but in the last 2 games leading up to the gold medal game, they have been the ones doing the chasing against Czechia and then Finland.
Andrew, they look so comfortable doing it, though. That's the only thing. And it's not very often that you can roll out a line of sometimes MacKinnon, McDavid, Celebrini, sometimes Wilson, McDavid, Celebrini, and then the next line you roll out is Marner, Stone, sometimes Crosby. This today, whoever was filling in for injured Crosby was doing, I guess, a heck of a job. Anybody that's been stepping up recently in the red and white has been doing a heck of a job. But Brad, he's back in the lineup. He didn't play a couple games in the round robin, but he only played about 11 minutes today. They said about 10 in the final few minutes. He was so impactful. He didn't play that much, but when he was on the ice, oh my goodness, Andrew, you could definitely notice him out there. So shout out to all the Nova Scotians once again, wearing the red and white Maple Leaf.
Nathan MacKinnon with the game tying goal, or, not the game tying goal, the game winner. I mean, unbelievable, really. I mean, this game overall, and I got to give credit to Shea Theodore, because that clapper from him, you talk about Brad Marchand being on the ice. I love watching to see in games like this for how the coach rolls his lines. And obviously we know the Mick, Mac, and Mac line was getting abused, like just getting used so much. Every second shift, we saw that top super line being put out there. But to put out the Bennett, Wilson, Marchand line to get an ozone faceoff, and Cooper says, no, you guys stay out there. You've earned it. And to get a goal there from Shea Theodore, and yeah, they're going to have fans complaining about goalie interference and this and offside this and high sticking that. It's a win. And I actually don't understand. If you're going to complain about the goalie interference, I get that if you're from Finland. But I don't want to hear anybody complain about the high stick that Nathan MacKinnon took. Yes, they scored a power play goal, but no, that is a call that has to be made. The referee does not want to make that call, but you have to make it because it was so blatant and so obvious. So the Canadians are off to the gold medal game for the men's Olympic ice hockey there. And we've got Marchand, we've got MacKinnon, and hopefully we get Sidney Crosby back in the lineup. All right, so we mentioned that the Wanderers getting training camp underway, players reporting to Halifax, players getting settled into some new digs, and we've seen all kinds of interviews coming around with players now. We're going to try and get in the mix soon before the team gets away, because they're going on a little bit of a mini vacation / training camp. So we'll update you with that. And we're going to try and get Josh Healy back on with us as well. But in the meantime, this Halifax Mooseheads team, they got to win, and then they get slapped. And then you get a close victory or close loss. I don't know what the deal is with this team, Dayton, but I think that you and I have been doing this podcast for several months now together. And long time, actually. And it feels like just yesterday the Moosehead season started. But one thing that you and I maybe haven't been critical enough to them about is their youth. We've tried to use it in a positive way and maybe use it not as an excuse, but something to talk about. And I think that this is the point of the season where the youth is really starting to show. And one thing people talk about is when you play major midget, you play a lot of games. But compared to the NCAA even, they play a lot of games. And, you're active during the week. There's a Wednesday, Thursday game, Saturday, Sunday, whatever it might be. And sometimes the youth factor with this Mooseheads team is really starting to show. And now there's going to be some lopsided losses that they've taken. But what I think almost stings more than those beatdown losses is a loss by just one goal, Dayton. Those kind of can sting even more.
Yeah, Andrew, they definitely can. I know that the 1-goal games are a little bit tougher to lose. I know that it's also pretty tough to lose 11-1 like you did last weekend if you're the Halifax Mooseheads. But those 1-goal games, when you are almost in control of the game, but I don't want to say they were in control of the game because they also started out down by 3. So, like, if you take this last game in Gatineau, for example, the Mooseheads started with a great start. Yasu Mensinen, he picks up another marker, and then it's 3 straight from Gatineau to put them up 3-1. And then you go to the second period, 4 straight from the Mooseheads. They look like they are finally awake. Like we always say, they need a gut punch. They need to be kind of knocked around to be woken up. And fine, that's what they did. They were up 2 goals. And then Gatineau, right back into it. It's like this Mooseheads team, they get too comfortable when they get up a couple, and it isn't really the best thing to do, especially when you have so many youngsters on your team. Sam Rousseau and Connor McPherson are the 20-year-olds, and they were brought in to kind of lead this team. But to be honest, I don't know if they're the right fit. You know what I mean? I don't know if anybody watching remembers back to the run when they made the finals back in 2023, but their overagers were their best players on the team. That's just it. And I think your overagers have to be your best players. That's just plain and simple. And they're not doing their jobs. Nobody really is doing their job. And I saw a comment on Facebook, actually, Andrew. People were mad about all the press that this Moose Tracks Uncharted is doing, and it's too much behind the scenes, I guess they're saying, and they're focusing too much on the posting videos on Facebook and la-da-da instead of getting results on the ice. And I was like, okay, settle down here. But I do know where they're going. I do know where they're going, though. They are very quick to, like, after a loss, post a video of Brad McKenzie in the dressing room, like, being like, blah, blah, blah. But I think that was also probably after the 11-1 loss, and people just couldn't find enough to be mad about, you know?
It's kind of like, well, the Crave documentary for the Canadians, the rebuild, right? Like, oh, well, hey, we lost this game, but we're still young. But a really, really great point by you. Great breakdown. I mean, you need your vets to be your vets. They don't necessarily have to be the guys that have the most points on the team or most goals in the team. But what they have to do is be the most impactful, you know, find a way to do something meaningful in every single game. And there's a lot of ways to contribute to a hockey game without just scoring. And you know, we know these guys are more than capable of stepping up and making plays. We just haven't seen it. So, yeah, tough one against Gatineau there. Then next up, we got Drummondville, Rimouski. So, I mean, it's not going to get any easier for them, but hopefully they can get a little bit of a run going. And it all starts tonight. And obviously with the AUS basketball taking place, which we'll talk about on Monday's show, it's a road trip here for the Mooseheads. So, Dayton, we'll see how it goes. I look forward to reacting with you to the next couple games here for the Mooseheads. Hopefully they can spring together a good next couple games. But as for now, we'll have to sit back and watch.
Yeah, the only thing I'm kind of hopeful for is that Rimouski is at the bottom of the table when it comes to the standings. So maybe that's a little bit of a refreshing look when you're the Mooseheads and you go and you check the standings and you see your opponent kind of near the bottom where you are. And I know they have to face Drummondville first, which is kind of a little bit of a tougher task when they're at the top of the Western Conference. So we'll see how that goes. But like we always say, it's a little bit of a rivalry that goes back to last year. So it should be fun.
Well, if anybody has a strong opinion that you want us to mention on the show, make sure you find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, X, or of course, across our YouTube channel as well, Halifax Sports Talk. Looking forward to a really fun next couple months with having multiple sports in action at once with the Mooseheads, with the Thunderbirds, with the Wanderers, and of course, AUS playoffs taking place. We'll recap the tournament as the games tip off. While we're recording this, the AUS basketball tournament's always a big time in the city for a lot of people to get out. We'll recap that, try and talk about it, and of course, we'll get you guys set for the Nationals as well. So that will do it for today's episode. Hope you guys enjoyed. Good to be back with all of you, and hopefully we can see some success from these Halifax-based teams this weekend. All the best, and go Canada, go!